you so much for joining me for this 10 card 1 kit video from the July 2018 Love from Lizi card kit. Card number 1, I've taken the decoupage sheets that were in the kit that are still available, and I'll put the link below for those that are interested. And I don't like the little knobs that are on the sides, the little spurs, let's call them, when you take them out. So I always trim those off, and I wanted you to see how I did that. I used the foam dimensional squares that were also in the kit, and these are just dynamite. They stick and they have a lot of dimension, but not too much, and I really like them. So I've used them on all of the layers, and here I'm showing you in this one how you go from the largest to the smallest, and a little more detail that I'm going to in the rest of the cards, but just so that you can see that you need to add dimension to all of the little bits and pieces and then apply them directly over the image on the card. Using a cardstock from my stash, I made a top fold portrait card 11.5 by 4.25, scoring at 5.5. I cut 2 strips from the pattern paper and laid them vertically down each side of the card base, securing the card front and then trimming it off the longer ends of the strips with my paper trimmer. I then trimmed down a layer for the inside of the card and used the stamp from the stamp set, Let Shell-abrate. Carrying the stripes into the inside of the card, I attached that right on to the card base and then secured the inside panel. The sequins from the kit were added to the front, and a few of them were layered, one on top of the other. And finally I used Nouveau drops, the white blizzard that was in the kit, and then one from Strawberry Cooley's from a previous kit. And that finishes this card. Here's a photograph so that you can have a closer look. And now we're on to card 2. I went with the shape of the decoupage, so I took the same color cardstock, cut it at 8.25, and scored it at 4 1/8. I ran pattern paper strips down vertically on both sides of the card base, trimming them with my scissors. I layered the decoupage that is in the kit with the foam squares, going from larger layer or more detailed to less detailed pieces, and then finally attaching the Fun in the Sun sentiment strip. I cut a white panel to attach this decoupage piece to, and then I rounded the corners with a corner chomper. I did this to both the base and the top layer. I cut another strip so that I could carry that same pattern paper onto the inside of the card and trim down the inside layer from the white cardstock that was included in the kit. I stamped the word beach, best escape anyone can have, with ink from my stash. Using liquid glue, I applied the pattern paper as well as the wood veneer starfish. Take some clear or transparent glue and attach the sand from the embellishment bag, applying it with my finger and then shaking off the excess. And that completes this card. And here's a photograph for a closer look. On to card number 3. Card number 3 is also a shape card, this time selecting round dies or circle dies from my stash. I cut a piece of paper in half, scoring it at 5.5 and doing some selective cutting, making sure that I left a portion attached. I also cut the smallest circle die as well as a couple extras so that I could use these for layers. I took the small circle die cut and I scored that in half, making sure that I burnished it well, and I attached it with liquid glue to the front and the back of the card base on the inside. Attaching the first layer of the decoupage to one of the circle die cuts, and then layering up the pieces with the foam squares that were included in the kit. I applied them, going from the most detail to the less detail. I made a frame using the two of the circle dies, one inside of the other, and layered this for the inside circle cut with liquid glue and attached this circle to the inside of the card. I attached the decoupage finish pieces for the front with liquid glue as well, and then trimmed off a portion of the front and the back of the card so that it would stand upright. The extra piece that was just for you in the die cut bag I put on the inside of the card. And that completes this card. Card number 5 uses pattern paper as well as the colored cardstock and the decoupage. I layered up the decoupage on a piece of white cardstock that was included in the kit, making sure that I cut some of the foam squares into several pieces so that it could go on the narrow parts of the frame and along different sections of the critters. Tails and limbs needed smaller portions than what I had on hand. I trimmed down this panel and then I punched imagery from pattern paper in the kit. Using colored yellow colored cardstock that was included in the kit, I made a top fold landscape card, trimming down the punched imagery and salvaging what was left of that pattern paper to use across the front. I also used peel-offs on the top and bottom of this pattern paper, attaching the decoupage piece and trimming it off all of the excess paper and peel-offs through the back. I then moved on to the inside of the card, using liquid adhesive to attach the punched imagery, and then flipping that over and trimming it off from the back side. A peel-off was also applied to the bottom of the punched imagery, and then a white panel was secured above that within the inside of the card base. Peel-offs decorated the top and bottom of this white panel, and they were trimmed off with a pair of scissors. I used a birthday sentiment from my stash and stamped that on the inside. And that completes this card. And here's a photograph for a closer look. And now we're on to card number 5. Card number 5 uses the red cardstock from the kit, cut in half at 4 1/4 and scored at 5 1/2 for a top fold portrait card. I assembled the by the sea decoupage sheet onto a white cardstock panel using the dimensional foam squares from the kit. Baker's twine from my stash was tied at the top by the fold of the red card base, and then a second piece or a second red panel was cut to 5 1/2 by 4 1/4 so that it could cover the twine on the inside of the card, making sure to use good strong double-sided tape and burnishing it well over the top of the twine. I cut down the white panel and then tied knots at both ends of the baker's twine, trimming them down so that they wouldn't be too long and obstruct the view of the card panel. I rounded off the bottom corners of both the card panel, the decoupage panel, and the card base. I stamped Let Shell-abrate from ink in my stash and then applied a small strip of one of the pattern papers along the bottom. The clear or transparent glue was also applied over the porthole of the ship, and that completes this card. And here's a photograph for a closer look. And now we're on to card number 6. I cut the white cardstock that was in the kit with an oval die, layering the decoupage sheet Happy Times on top of the oval die cut, making sure to cut the dimensional foam squares into smaller strips to accommodate the size of the frame and the little bits on the critter, mainly the tail and the limb. I attached Happy Times over the top and then used the yellow ribbon from the embellishment bag, securing it along the side with a glue dot. I cut an extra panel from the blue cardstock in the kit and then applied double-sided adhesive, a strong one, burnishing it well over the ribbon and then attaching the blue cardstock panel along the inside so that you wouldn't see the back of the ribbon on the inside of the card. I salvaged a piece of pattern paper from the decoupage sheet, applying it vertically along the side of the inside of the card, and then used to peel off between the white inside card base and that pattern paper. I finished it with sequins from the kit and stamped a birthday greeting from my stash. And that completes this card. And now we're on to card number 7. Card number 7 is a different shaped card. I decided to cut down a smaller 4x4 panel to attach the decoupage sheet directly to that with liquid glue and then layering it up with the dimensional foam squares from the kit. I had to cut them in little pieces here as well because the beverage glasses and parts of the toad were smaller than the squares. I stamped the beach Best Escape Ever along the inside and then added a strip of strong double-sided adhesive and then burnished on some glitter dust, Nouveau glitter dust, and then applied blue cardstock from the kit along the bottom. I attached the inside panel and then cut it all down so that the angle would be on all 4 corners of the card. I also used the transparent glue again and then applied some of the sand from the embellishment bag. And that completes this card. And now we're on to card number 8. I assembled the pieces from the Splish Splash decoupage sheet and then cut a card base from 8.5 by 5.5 and scored at 4.25 for a top fold landscape card. The decoupage was assembled just as all the other cards were, using dimensional foam squares from my stash as well as the ones that were provided in the kit. I took the orange ribbon and tied that to the bottom of the card base, leaving room for 1 centimeter pattern strips that were cut from the pattern paper, the 6x6 selection of pattern papers in the card kit, and this ribbon was secured with a glue dot. The decoupage panel was attached with liquid glue between the 2 strips. I cut an extra panel so that I could use that to cover the ribbon from the inside of the card and stamped "Happiness Comes in Waves" on the inside panel, securing an additional pattern strip along the bottom. The ribbon was covered in the same fashion with a good strong double adhesive tape and burnishing it well. And that completes this card. And here's a photograph for a closer look. And now we're on to card number 9. Unfortunately, I lost footage, but I made a shaker card out of a round shaker pouch with sand from the embellishment bag, sand dollars, the wood veneer seahorse, and some of the sequins from the sequin bag. This was added to the inside of the card. The front of the card was ink blended with distress inks and different stencils. The wood veneer sailboat was added to the top portion of the card, and the die cut of 2 critters sitting on beach chairs was attached to the bottom. Beach, the best escape anyone can have, was stamped from the stamp set on the inside, and that completes this card. And now we're on to card number 10. Card number 10 is also more ink blending using distressed inks and a few stencils. I used a stronger glue to hold a lot of the sand to the bottom portion of the card. I added it in a haphazard kind of way so it would look like it was dunes. I cut a frame with sand-colored cardstock from my stash as well as a piece of acetate to go inside of the frame. I glued it with liquid adhesive and I trimmed down the front panel. I also had a banner made from the foam stickers or pliable stickers that were in the kit using a thin baker's twine. I attached the baker's twine to the back of the front panel using double-sided adhesive tape on this so that I could cover that well once I attached the front panel to the front of the card. A side fold portrait card. The frame was attached using dimensional foam strips, and an inside panel was cut, as well as a banner from the pattern paper attached to the bottom of the inside panel. Happiness Comes in Waves from the stamp set was stamped in the center of the inside card panel, and this inside card panel was attached with a liquid glue. And that completes this card. And here's a photograph. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'd like to know which card you liked the most. Bye-bye.